Tell Lord Tywin, winter is coming for him. 20,000 Northerners marching south to find out if he really does shit gold.
Hey guys, so this will be my first video in a good while actually, and I've got to say I've kind of missed the process of it. And what's inspired me to be here talking to you again is recently seeing a lot of comparisons between the Song of Ice and Fire book series and its TV adaptation Game of Thrones, which I've found to be a little bit biased and heavy-handed. I mean, I've seen a lot of people who were big fans of the books completely demonize the show for things that I don't see as all that much of a big deal, and also for reasons that I see as a little bit uneducated. Like, a lot of these criticisms haven't taken into account every little factor involved with translating something as epic as the Song of Ice and Fire series onto the screen. Now, while I think Game of Thrones is a quality production, I would probably even list it in my top 5 TV shows of all time. It's not without its faults, obviously, like almost anything else. However, I think it's a very earnest effort to recreate George R.R. Martin's epic. I mean, these books are so epic, with so many different point of view characters and so many different minor characters that come and go, that to expect the TV series that's on a budget that's much lower than epic films like The Lord of the Rings to keep up with it all, to cast actors for every single role, is nothing short of unreasonable. Now, while this has been my introduction, it's actually not what I'm going to focus on in this video. Instead, as the title suggests, I'm going to focus predominantly on how the young wolf Robb Stark translates onto the TV screen, as well as other translations. I'll probably mention Catelyn and Jane, Robb's beloved wife, a couple of times, and it's going to come off as a little bit of a structured rant, as I'm not going off a script here, but I'm hoping you guys get a bit out of this, so here we go. So, the reason I've chosen Robb Stark, the young wolf in particular, is because I think he presents a rather unique challenge, I would say, as far as adapting him into the TV series for those creators. You guys can correct me on this if you like. In fact, if I'm wrong, it'd be good if I knew, but I would make the claim that at least in the first 3 books, Robb Stark is the most major character that does not get his own point of view. We never know what he's thinking, and George himself has even stated that he did think long and hard about giving Robb his own point of view, but that the Storm of Swords book was already running way too long as it was, so that would have just prolonged it somewhat unnecessarily, and personally I'm happy with the finished product anyway. So back on track here, the way we see Robb when we read the books is through, I'll say predominantly through Catelyn, as those two are together for so long, even though others do observe him. He's first described through Bran. It's through Catelyn, this concerned mother, seeing her young son in way above his head, and we're left to guess what Robb's going through. Now, shift to the TV series Game of Thrones, where both Catelyn and Robb are put on screen. It's no longer through any individual's point of view. We are as privy to what Catelyn's thinking in the scenes that they're together as we are with Robb. Robb is just as much of a character now in Game of Thrones as Jon, as Daenerys, as anyone else, and personally I think that's something everyone should take into account when adapting this series, or when critiquing Game of Thrones. There's no longer a point of view to focus on, and that point of view is such a big part of A Song of Ice and Fire, and there is absolutely no way of capturing that on the TV screen, that it's inevitable that the TV series is going to lose out on a lot of the original nuances that George intended. So that's something that I really believe anyone who is really invested in the books should keep in mind when they're watching Game of Thrones. It can't possibly live up to a lot of your expectations. So this will lead me to my next point, and this doesn't just go for Robb, believe it or not, but I will say predominantly with reference to Robb, and a little bit of a criticism of the show that I have. but I understand why it's there, is the vast age difference between Richard Madden. You know, he's 26. I can't even suspend my disbelief to imagine that he's Robb Stark's age, because Robb Stark in the books was between 15 and 16. And I understand this decision because, frankly, casting actors the same age that George wrote them would probably be pretty shocking in certain scenes, particularly Daenerys and Drogo in episode 1. If they actually cast a 13-year-old and showed some of those scenes, I don't think we'd be getting a season 2, you know. That scene was powerful enough as is, with her essentially getting raped. And with Robb Stark, what I think this loses out on is that in the books, and this is the impression I got through Catelyn's point of view, in the books when he led his rebellion, he was really faking confidence quite a lot. You know, obviously in the world George R.R. Martin has written, people are expected to, and probably do, age at a much greater rate than we do in our world. But nevertheless, he's still 15. He's still much younger than those around him. His father's died, which psychologists can probably say a lot on the effects that has, and he's expected to lead this rebellion where thousands of people under his command are going to die. And the turmoil and the insecurity that this character must have faced in the books, I believed through and through. However, with Game of Thrones and Richard Madden, I don't quite get that same impression. I see this guy, this 26-year-old, strikingly handsome guy, I might add, leading and talking, and to be honest, I see nothing but confidence and competence. I see someone who I would probably get behind. I mean, I'm sure there are moments there where Richard Madden tries to make Robb look a bit less secure and less sure of himself than, you know, he is trying to put forward, but yeah, I guess I just don't really see it. Here's some footage that I think illustrates my point.
I wouldn't let you wave your blunders around like a victory flag.
My blunder sent Tywin's mad dog scurrying back to Casterly Rock with his tail between his legs. I think King Robb understands we're not going to win this war if he's the only one winning any battles. There's glory enough to go around.
It's not about glory. Your instructions were to wait for him to come to you.
I seized an opportunity.
What value was the mill?
The mountain was garrisoned across the river from it.
Is he there now?
Of course not. We took the fight to him. He could not withstand us.
I wanted to draw the mountain into the west, into our country where we could surround him and kill him. I wanted him to chase us, which he would have done because he is a mad dog without a strategic thought in his head. I could have that head on a spike by now. Instead, I have a mill.
We took hostages. Willem Lannister, Martin Lannister.
Willem and Martin Lannister are 14 years old.
Martin is 15, I believe.
Tywin Lannister has my sisters. Have I sued for peace?
No.
Do you think he'll sue for peace because we have his father's brother's great-grandsons? One victory does not make us conquerors. Did we free my father? Did we rescue my sisters from the Queen? Did we free the North from those who want us on our knees? This war is far from over.
So before I wrap up, I would like to talk about another difference between Robb in the books and Robb in Game of Thrones that stuck out to me personally. I'm not entirely sure if anyone else would have noticed this, or if anyone else would have even cared to notice it given everything else that was going on, but his wife, Jane, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. In the books, the impression I got, you know, just like Robb, she's 15 to 16. She was a shy girl. Jaime Lannister certainly thought she was shy from his point of view. And nothing about her seemed anything beyond average. She certainly wasn't some eccentric character like Queen Cersei or Asher or Brienne or whoever. She was really just another girl caught up in this world who Robb happened to fall in love with or sleep with in his own grief and found a bit of affection for. And to me, this story seemed quite genuine. It seems likely that Robb, being a young man in the middle of all this turmoil, against his better judgment, could fall for a young lady that he might see something in that, you know, doesn't necessarily have to be anything special. But when it comes time to casting actors in Game of Thrones, I think they missed out on a little bit by casting Una Chaplin. I'm not sure how to say her name. I know she's Charlie Chaplin's granddaughter, because she's, I would say, a fairly glamorous looking woman, and they really did ham up the drama between those two. I mean, not only was their romance quite prolonged throughout the season, and there was a lot more emphasis placed on it than the books. You know, I personally, I find that very laboured in shows when we know they're going to hook up, so really just get on with it, especially since everything else is going on. So it took up more screen time, and the way they ended up having sex the first time, I mean, you know, there are memes all over Facebook on that. It was just absurd. She was talking about her dead brother, and suddenly, boom, Robb's turned on. Again, it's a total far cry from the original intention, in my opinion, or what I originally got out of it. And yeah, I would say I favour their relationship in the books much more for that reason. So I guess that's about the extent of my opinion on the Game of Thrones Robb Stark compared with the Ice and Fire Robb Stark and everything else that translation onto screen would entail. But what I would like to know is, for anyone watching this and anyone who is interested in the show and in the books, or maybe you just like the show and you don't really care about spoilers, what are your opinions on this? Did I miss anything? I'm quite sure I did, considering how diehard some of the fans of this series are. What I'm also quite curious about, for anyone who's willing to comment here and let me know, is what is your favourite on-screen character translation in the Ice and Fire series? Which actor do you think best personified your favourite character, or a character you liked from the books? Or maybe they didn't best personify it, maybe they did something completely separate with the character and maybe you liked it anyway. Whatever reason, I would like to know some people's favourites. It would be good if no one mentioned Peter Dinklage, because he's one we've all heard to death, but if that's what floats your boat, then let me know. I guess I'll finish off by saying, personally, by far my favourite character translation for Game of Thrones is the Hound. That actor, I don't have his name handy, I don't know anything else he has done, but every time he's on the screen, I can't help but laugh at how awestruck I am by how fearsome and unforgiving this guy is. I mean, I really get the impression that this is a man that just does not give a fuck anymore. How much he mocks the notion of knighthood, how much he mocks Sansa in Season 2. I could just watch a compilation of clips of that character. In fact, maybe I'll edit one. So with all that in mind, guys, if you liked this video, and if you liked my other Jaime Lannister video, like and subscribe. And for now, I'm going to leave you with a clue on who or what I will be covering next week. Enjoy!
How I wish that you could see.